Joining us on the line now is American actor James Chen, who stars as Cal in AMC's The Walking Dead, as well as being in The Amazing Spiderman and also Netflix's front cover. First things first, James, how are things with you over in New York?
Oh, they're great, thanks. We just had a pretty big snow over the past 15, 16 hours, so I guess the city is just kind of slushing its way through that. But, we're here just hustling every day as usual.
We had snow over here last week, and England just can't seem to cope with the snow. Are America a little bit better at dealing with it?
I would say, definitely out of New York, they got a system down. I remember, before a flake even hit the pavement, there were just the garbage trucks dropping salt on the asphalt. But it's been a little interesting the past couple weeks because we had these blizzard predictions, and they wound up being a little tame. So, yeah, we're not impressed yet.
You got off lightly. So I want to talk today, James, about The Walking Dead, as well as some of the upcoming projects you've got coming up personally on screen. But let's start with The Walking Dead. I've asked this to everyone. We've interviewed quite a few actors from the show recently. Were you a fan of the show or the comic before you got given the part?
I actually hadn't watched it before I started working on the show, and it just completely impressed and almost overwhelmed how large the universe was, how big the fan base was, and how just well done of a project it is.
So are you hooked now, would you say, James?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think I've watched every single episode by now.
I was going to say, did they make you go back and watch all the episodes?
No, that was not a requirement, no. At least not one that they articulated to me, but because, we don't necessarily know exactly what's happening per se when we get there, so I just thought it would be in my best interest to do my due diligence and just try to absorb as much as I could about the show. And when you start reading those graphic novels, you get kind of an insight into the tone and things like that, so that was really just kind of good to kind of set my mind, my mental space for the world going into it all.
You mentioned the graphic novel there, and that obviously influences a lot of what The Walking Dead does, but the series has and does seem to stray away from the comic in quite a few instances. But Cal, of course, is a character in the comics. Did you have to study kind of the character within the comics a fair bit before you got the role, or were you able to have a bit more free license with it?
Well, funny story, actually. When I auditioned for the show, it was for... The character had a name on those sides. I can't remember exactly what it was. Something like John or Greg or something like that. And so when I booked the role, it was under that name. I didn't find out until I arrived on set that it was actually going to be Cal.
Oh, right.
So I arrived at my wardrobe fitting, and, the costume designer is mentioning Cal, and I'm like, oh, no, I'm playing this guy. She's like, oh, no. And she pointed to this storyboard that had copy cutouts of the character Cal from the novel. It's kind of like a template for his look and his energy and his feel as we were kind of putting it together in that initial wardrobe fitting. So that was the first time I realized that is who I would be playing. Since then, though, it's been really interesting to, reference how he was kind of portrayed in those graphic novels, the kind of relationship he has with other people at the Hilltop Community, and you get the sense of the function he plays there. But yeah, it's always drawing some inspiration from whatever's out there. He's very well established as the spirit-carrying guard at the gates of the Hilltop, and kind of fiercely loyal, I would say, just based on the first few appearances in the graphic novel alone. So that's pretty helpful.
And of course, you get to have those pretty cool spears.
They're absolutely incredible. Every single one of those are homemade. It is just world-class in every department on that show. I'm always so impressed. We got there, and every spear was different, and they had such these beautiful, unique touches to it, because they actually have a blacksmith. This is a Hilltop Community. They can make whatever they want, and they do. I think it's cool because it's one of the distinguishing features of the Hilltop is that there's custom-made spears and spear tips, really, is what it is. But yeah, we've got all sorts of beautiful designs, like little trident-looking spears, more traditional ones that are like miniature size. I don't know if you can catch that detail in the footage that's been aired yet, but if you can, it's kind of one of those beautiful little touches that kind of bring the world to life more.
Going back to what you said earlier about when you auditioned, you didn't audition for Cal, you auditioned for a character under a different name. It's interesting, we spoke to Lou Temple recently, who of course played the part of Axel, and he was saying, because he auditioned back along for the character of Daryl, but Daryl didn't have a name by that point in the comic. Out of interest, because we spoke to Josh Michael as well, who of course plays Jared, and he said that he'd gone for the role of Gavin as well, and had you auditioned for the show before you went for Cal, out of interest?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, in the span of maybe 2 weeks or so, I actually auditioned about 3 times. I guess so. I sent in my initial audition footage, and I got some feedback that they were really interested. They wanted to give me an adjustment, and after a couple of adjustments, they gave me basically a new role to audition for. And then finally after that, I got the call confirming that I was booked. So yeah, you could tell that there was like a bit of trying to see where I would fit in the overall scheme of the story and all their characters. So yeah, it was about the third or fourth time I was auditioning for them before I booked it.
You mentioned earlier about Cal being kind of the head of security and one of the guards, of course, at the Hilltop fences. That's obviously along with Eduardo, who's played by Peter Zimmerman. What's your relationship been like with some of the other actors? In particular, I know you obviously work quite closely with Peter on the show. What's your kind of relationship like with a lot of the actors on the show?
You know, I feel like everyone over there is just a great big family. I mean, obviously we came into the show in season 6, so they were all quite like thick as thieves and oldest friends. But they're all extremely welcoming and warm and so sweet, extremely professional. And me and the other group of actors that kind of came in around that time, that Hilltop Community, we became kind of our family. That's when we were kind of initiated into the Walking Dead world. So it's like me, Peter, Karen, who plays Birdie, a lot of other, Oscar over there. We're all pretty tight. Like every time, we were usually working together on set as well if we're shooting in the Hilltops. So we kind of experienced the show for the first time together. So that was part of our big bonding experience. But yeah, Peter and I would say mostly worked together. I think we were established well in the comics. And I think they got a great rapport that has kind of been established in the comics. There's been a little deviation since then. So Peter and I, we chat all the time.
Sticking with some of your co-stars in the show, aside from the ones you've mentioned there, anyone you've particularly enjoyed working with? I know there's obviously some big stars in The Walking Dead. We were chatting to R. Keith Harris a few weeks ago, said he's particularly enjoyed working with you. He's particularly enjoyed actors that don't normally seem to get the headlines. He's particularly enjoyed working with. Who in particular have you had the pleasure of acting alongside?
Sure, yeah. First off, got to give a shout-out to R. Keith Harris there as Dr. Carson. I don't know that he and I have ever worked in a scene together, but I just love his work as an actor. He's a great, great guy. He's had some cool times hanging out in Atlanta. Well, you know, Lauren Cohen just is so inspirational. She's like a quarterback or a captain or a great leader, you know. She is incredibly sweet, warm, welcoming to everyone, every department on set, whether she's known you in the crew for 7-8 years or you're just working for the first time that day. They always make you feel welcome. And when it's time to work, she's just so focused and she's so good. I just love all the different things that she gets to do as a character on that show. And she just makes it look really easy. I had a great time just, you know, meeting her and working with her over the years.
James, I think we'll go back to Cal now because I want to ask you a few questions about that character. Firstly, how much fun was this particular scene to shoot?
You mean where you ate a little girl's pancakes?
I did not eat those pancakes!
Was that good fun?
That was the best. That was, you know, I'm just glad I got to throw up a middle finger there and join the middle finger collective there on The Walking Dead. Yeah, it was really great. I remember Xander is so great.
On social media, you seem to have a good relationship with him.
Yeah, well, he's definitely someone I love working with and just hanging out with on set. First of all, he's like a film legend. He's been in so many of all of our favorite movies to the point where I'm like, oh my God, you're right. You were that guy you were the stepdad in Terminator 2, and just being able to be like, so what was that like, man? And he's such a fantastic actor. You can just tell, has so much attention to detail and what he's crafting there with the character. And again, he just makes it look easy. He's so funny just to crack jokes with on set. So yeah, that particular morning, I remember it was just, I think, me, him, and Lauren. Lauren was inside the gate, Xander was outside, I was up on top. And it was interesting because we were all kind of in our little zone. Xander was separated from everyone, including the crew, by being outside. Lauren was inside. I was kind of separated on top. So we were all in our little world, and then we kind of came together in that moment. That was pretty cool to me. And I was also reading these lines, sorghum pancakes, stealing them from a little girl. I was like, am I missing something? What is it? It just seemed a little non sequitur at first, but then I'm just like, yeah, this is just clearly the details of when he and I were on that trip. that we took at the end of the previous season. And I loved it. I loved those details, how they just didn't leave it hanging about how that trip ended. And I love how Gregory is just a bit of a jerk.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Cal seems a little bit suspicious of Rick when Rick first comes in. I think it's Jesus who brings Rick into the fold, and Cal immediately doesn't particularly seem to warm to Rick. Do you think he's starting to warm to a lot of that group now?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, I think initially it's like we don't know these people, and the relationship with outsiders that we did know at that point were the saviors, and they're incredibly violent, and they would kill people and members of our community. So I think part of our survival has been just one of isolation. We literally have like 15, 20-foot walls surrounding ourselves. And when these guys show up and they've got guns, I mean, as far as I could tell, they might be saviors. They might have gotten Jesus captured. In that moment when they first roll up, there's just so much that's unclear about what's happening. I remember that day pretty cool. Like Tom Payne as Jesus, he was channeling Jesus, and he just brought the calm energy vibe that you knew that everything was okay, that we should trust that these guys were okay. But at that moment, it was Jesus making that call, and literally the guy who's opening the gate. If this is a mistake, then everyone in there is at risk and at danger. Soon after, they definitely prove that they're against the saviors, that they're here to survive and to help out in best ways that they can. And Maggie has proved herself just an extraordinary leader. And so, part of the good guys.
Last couple of things on Cal, because you mentioned then that Maggie is a good leader, but of course Cal looks pretty shocked when Maggie kills one of the workmen that is being kind of held hostage at the hilltop. Do you think he understands why she does this, or do you think from that point on Cal's going to become a little bit more suspicious of Maggie?
I wouldn't say suspicious. I think literally at the moment that Maggie shot that POW, we weren't completely sure what happened on the road, where she had just come back from. Clearly something bad had happened, and when she wasn't explaining what had happened or why she was doing it, we were just kind of following orders. Also, we hadn't seen that kind of overt violence from Maggie before as well. So I think that's where, between those two things, the shock of her killing that POW came from. But then it was, as soon as she kind of finished that job, she's like, they killed one of our own on the road. And then I think for us, that was a wake-up call for Maggie. Establishes herself as more of a leader, someone who takes action and will not tolerate the endangering her own people. So if anything, I thought that kind of made me more dedicated. It was a bit of a shock, like a wake-up call, in that she stepped up in a major way to show how much of a leader she is. I think that's what that whole process was for Cal.
Okay, and on Gregory as well, as you said earlier, Gregory is a bit of a jerk towards Cal. There's one scene, isn't there, where he says Cal's deluded, and then you kind of pop up straight away. But they don't seem to have a particularly great relationship. Cal's always seemed to be taking Gregory drinks and whatnot. Now Gregory is being kept as a prisoner. Do you think Cal, obviously, as you said earlier, Gregory is not the nice guy in this, but do you think Cal has a little bit of sympathy for Gregory because he's been with him, for ages in the outbreak?
Yeah, I thought about that too, and honestly, I don't think so.
Really?
I mean, there could be some back there, but I don't know. I've been with him for so long, I've seen him behaving this way for so long, that I feel like it's more of like duty to when he was at charge of the Hilltop. There was like a deference for a chain of command and like accepting that helping Gregory out is the best way to help the community, because at that point we had trusted him with making the best decisions for ourselves. And so, unfortunately, you have to deal with and accept all of his shenanigans. But once someone lies to you, it's hard for them to gain your trust back to them. And I mean, talking about suspicion, I just feel like that's something that doesn't really go away. Not to say that I don't care about his well-being, but as far as I think there's a good amount of just desserts in him being put in that POW pen.
Yeah. And lastly, on The Walking Dead, James, just want to ask you, the show has obviously been teasing all-out war for quite a while now. How excited are you for the fans to see the last bit of this series? Is it going to be a good one?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, I don't know if you saw the sneaks from next week's episode.
Yes.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. It's really exciting. Yeah, it's really coming to a head. I know I had an amazing time filming it and working with Tobin and all those guys that you see from other communities there in that trailer, in that sneak peek. Yeah, I think it will be very satisfying.
I appreciate you probably can't say any more than that. James, let's move on now.
I know. You hear me.
Are you constantly worried about what you have to say when you're on a show like The Walking Dead? It must feel kind of... because you can't give anything away.
You can. It's absolutely crazy. I sometimes just forget that I'm on that show just so it's easier to kind of like have normal interactions. But, every time I do an interview like this, I just kind of like do like a mental checklist of like, okay, this is what I'm going to say. This is what I can't say. So... yeah, it's a little crazy.
Fair enough. And James, I want to ask you about a couple of projects you got coming up. Firstly, Fluidity. Now, that's directed by Linda Yellen. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that film?
Yeah.
Has it finished shooting now?
We did. We finished that in August, I think. Yeah, Linda Yellen's an amazing writer-director. She actually won an Emmy in the 80s or 90s for a great TV show she produced. And great director, great instincts. She's been a New York filmmaker for like 30 years, maybe more, 40 years. So Fluidity is a story about a group of millennials in present day and how it's kind of an examination of how technology and sexuality all interact to kind of give us, it's about sexual fluidity in 2017, 2018, and kind of takes a close look at all the different ways that young people these days, I guess, explore and express their relationships and their sexuality. And we shot that pretty much all over New York for that month. It was a lot of fun, a lot of great people, great actors on that show. I'm excited for you to see it. I haven't seen a rough cut yet, so I couldn't really tell you. But I've heard it's coming together great.
Of course, that's not it. You've got a few more projects coming up as well. Unintended. Now, this one looks really interesting. What's the story with that? Do you know when that's coming out? Have you finished filming? Because that looks really, really interesting.
Yeah, we shot that I think it wrapped in June or July. It's a really interesting story. It's kind of a story of maybe like someone's past coming to haunt them in the present. I don't know how much I could say without giving too much away, but it's a story about a girl who, as a child, has a traumatic experience involving another boy, and as she goes on with her life, she is coping with the PTSD of what happened to her when she was young. And it's like a thriller type of a story. There's a lot of rediscovering of old secrets. And I play a coworker of one of the male leads who... what can I say? We discovered...
You've got the Walking Dead restraints on you again. You're not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to give too much away, but I guess together we kind of put together some pieces to help him reconnect with his past. And yeah, I think it's really well written, really exciting stuff by a great writer-director, Anya Merman, and she's another New York City filmmaker who's been in the city for, another 30 years. So yeah, it's a great indie film. I was really happy to work with those guys, really talented people.
And the other project I wanted to ask you about, James, something that's directed by, and I think written by as well, Patrick Wang, is A Bread Factory Part 2. What's your involvement in that like?
Yeah, that project is really interesting. Patrick Wang is a brilliant award-winning writer and filmmaker, also based out of New York City. It's really, God, how do you describe it? I mean, he has such a singular vision for what this film is. It's actually loosely based on a true location, which is a old bread factory that's converted into an art space in a real town in upstate New York, basically in Hudson. And it's about that community of artists trying to preserve their art space against redevelopment from real estate developers. And you meet all the different kind of idiosyncratic characters in this community. And I play one of the performances that happens in this art space is kind of an avant-garde art presentation, and I play one of the actors in that demo. So it's like a little meta, like an actor playing an actor in that.
Oh, brilliant. And before we let you go, James, I just want to ask you as well, because, of course, you of course, starred in Amazing Spiderman. What was that set like to work on? Because, I mean, that must have been an unbelievable project.
Yeah, that was certainly the biggest budget film I think I'd ever been on. It was incredible. Mark Webb was directing. I was doing that scene that day was me and Dennis Leary at the Custom House in downtown New York. in the financial district. It's where like all the big city hall and like Police Plaza 1 are located, all the kind of like headquartered buildings of Manhattan. And this one was the Custom House, which had a lot of history, beautiful architecture, and it was like 200 extras on the street. They had a stuntman, and it began with a walk and talk with me and Dennis Leary, and as we exit the building, the stuntman drops down from a wire as if he's been spun and wrapped up by Spider-Man. And then as we look out across the plaza, across all these hundreds of extras, we see Spider-Man like swinging his web into the distance. That was incredible, just because like the sheer logistics and production value of everything involved in that was absolutely wild. And it was just so cool getting to meet and work with Dennis Leary and Mark Webb. Met Andrew Garfield briefly. That was definitely one for the books.
Sounds like a brilliant project to be a part of. James Chen, thank you very much for joining us on the line.
Thank you, Henry. Hi, my name is James Chen. I play Cal on The Walking Dead, and you're listening to Raw.